Hello, it's Duncan. Last week we deployed our delete feature into production. It feels good to be making some progress, so we'll crack on this week with the next feature. We follow the same process. Prototype an interface, wire in a handler, TDD adding the functionality to the main app, and then have the handler call it. Finally, when we come to refactor the validation code, we end up using NullPointerExceptions for control flow. This is a first for me, so I'll be interested to see if anyone else thinks it's a good idea. Alison, the owner of Gilded Rose, is chuffed that we've got remove items from the stock list working. And she says that if we can just get add items working, the next story, then she'll be able to stop using the Excel file that she's currently using, and then our Postgres database will be the source of truth. That would be good for us because we've got the complication of running the two items repositories in parallel. So let's crack on with add items to stock list. But before we do, note that Alison has shared some of her roadmap with us. She'd like to be able to edit items in the stock list eventually. She has plans to show the stock list on the internet and let people buy from it. The value of service charges are a bit high, and so on. We're not sure that this is the priority order of these stories yet, but we do know that she does want add items first. So if we go to our test main and run that and look at the page, then we can see this is our current user interface, and it's rendered with a handlebars template, which is stock list view model. So you can see handlebars is rendering these things here. And over here, these are our items which are produced in this table. One row for each item. We talked the options through with Alison and come to the conclusion that if we had a blank row at the top here with a button, then she could fill in the fields and just press the button to add an item there. So let's prototype that. The rows would be something like this. So let's take that and put it as the first row in the table. Now the first column is going to have nothing in it because we can't delete that sort of prototype row. So we take that out. The ID will have an input, and its type is going to be text. Let's say for now that it is required, and that might do. And then we'll take one of those and put it in here for the name. The sell by date, well, these days we've got date pickers, so we might just say that's a date. It's not required because some magical items don't have a sell by date. The sell by days is calculated, so we don't want anything in there. The quality, that will be an input of a number, and I think that is required. And then the price, well, we don't fill that in, that gets fetched from value off, so we will leave that blank. Now we've got some styles here. Those are just to align things right. I don't suppose it's required on this field here at least, or this one. Now if we save that and reload the page, then we see that it's ugly, but we're getting there. I think maybe if we give this one a size of 5 characters, and this one a size of 20 characters, and reload. Well, that's getting there. The quality column is still too wide, so we can make that here size equals 3 maybe, and reload. Well, that's good, I think, but I guess we also need a button to say that we want to commit that. And it would be logical maybe to use this little bit of space here where the price is. So we could put in here, we could say I want an input, its type equals submit, and the text on the button will be, I think, add. Complete that, reload, and there's our button. And I think we might be able to style that with width is 100%. Let's just see, reload, perfect. Now what will happen if we click that button? Well, its type is submit, so I think if we click it here, Oh, well, our required fields are working, so let's give it a value here of something and something, and equality, and say add. And now if we go down here, we're getting a post to delete items, and that's because this entire form is set to post to delete items. But I think we want add to be a different thing, and we can specify that here in the submit button by saying that we want its form action to be a different URL. So not delete items, but /add item. So now if we try that, refresh, and click add, after filling in some fields, now we've got to add item, which is an unknown root. So we'll have a 404 for not found. So we're getting there. Now let's go to our roots and add ourselves a handler for that. So I think we'll say we just added add item, and that's a post, and we'll say we have an add handler, put the comma in there, and add handler, we will create a function which takes a request, returns a response, but we know needs to be an extension on app. And for now in here, let's just println the request. And then we need to return something, and the delete handler will return a cOther, which is a redirect, sending us back to the current page. So let's do that as well. Put that in there. And now we need to rerun our test main to see that new route. Here we go. And now if we go back to the root, add in some things, and click add. Now we don't get a 404, and we can see here the headers for our request. We're not seeing the form fields though, and that's because we haven't filled them in here. So we need to give these a name, and this name will be new item ID. This name will be new item name, new item sell by, new item quality. Save it, reload, fill in, fill in, fill in, add a date with a nice date picker, add, and now down here we can see the values of our fields. Splendid. We're making good progress. I think we'll solidify it with a commit. Let's hide this new row behind a feature flag. So I think we'll have a property of if show new item row, then we will add those. Now we'll go to our features and change this dummy to be new item enabled, defaulting to false in production. In test main, we can say set that flag. So we'll set that to be true. And then in our rendering, we can take our features and use that in our view model. So here we'll say show new item row, which is Boolean, and we can populate that here with show new item row equals features new item enabled. Let's start by rerunning main and reload the page. Then we do see our user interface, which is good. But now if we rerun all the tests, we have two failures. Let's have a look. And they're both in list stock. This one here is just a blank line change where Handlebars has put in a blank line around the if. I'm getting a bit annoyed about that, but it's okay, so we can approve that. And that shows that in production, where we don't have the flag set, we aren't showing that row. And the same here, probably it is, so we can approve that. Rerun. And things are good. I don't think I'm going to write an approvals test for the view with show new item row set, for now at least, because this is the thing we're actually working on and it will keep on changing. But the feature flag means that it's safe to push that production with start work on add item. And we've got 6 warnings here. Let's just have a look. one in roots, well, that's just the truth. And here we have missing associated label. We've been getting that a lot in our HTML, and it seems that the inspection wants there to be a label, but we're really using the table column as a label. So I think if we did F2 in here and then said more actions, we might suppress in the file and then just amend commit that. But before we do that, we'll have changed the approved file again, so we'll have to run the tests. They fail, we approve that one, and sanity check that just in case. Yes, we're right, approve that one, rerun. All is good, and we can now amend commit. Good. Okay, now we know where we're going. Let's work test first. And we currently have some functional tests. So I think let's have a look at delete items tests. That looks like a good place to start. I think we're just going to duplicate that as add item tests. And add. Now, in order to see our new UI, when we build an app, we're going to have to give it features with new item enabled. True? And I think what we'll do is we'll go straight for the HTTP version of the tests to work in from the outside. We'll get rid of this one, and that one, and that one. And this will be add item via HTTP. Now if I take our view over here, we can see that what it's going to do is it's going to post to add item. Put that in there. And it's going to be a form with these fields in it. So let's take one of them, which is new item ID. And that's going to be new ID, say. And let's give ourselves some space for the others. We're going to have new item name. It's going to be new name. New sell by, that we want to be a date. So that will be, say, 2023-07-3. And we also have the new item quality, which will say it will be 42. Now we know we want to do a redirect to re-render the page. And what should our stock list look like? Well, it should have a new item in it. So I think we can get rid of that now. Maybe go back up to the top, have a stock list with just one thing in it. Simplify things. And so when we're done, it should have the one item here that it originally had and a new item. We've got a factory and tests for building those. Let's remind ourselves we can call this item that looks like that. So our new one is going to be new name 2023-07-23, and it looks like we're reusing 42, so let's go with 99 in there and 99 in there. What about the ID? Well, this item is creating one for us, but we have one that will take an ID as a string. That's good. So we can use new ID in there. And here we're not actually checking what's been rendered, we are checking what we committed to the database. That's why we're doing a load here. Okay, well, it's very unlikely that will pass, but let's just run it. And we're right, and it is indeed this one that's the problem. It's not the right failure though, this is saying index out of bounds, and that's because I should really have a 0 in there because we've only got one item in our original stock list. I think really going back to our price stock list is a bad thing here. We kind of put a price stock list into the fixture, but I think really what we should be doing is going to the fixture and asking for its stock list and getting the only item out of that. Run that. And that now fails in the way we expect, which is to say we don't have the new item. Before we go on, let's just remind ourselves that people can post anything from a form if our server is on the internet. So we need to check blank fields, invalidate, negative qualities, and all those sort of things. But for now, I think we can disable this test as work in progress while we get on with adding the functionality that it will need to the app. And that should have been add item. And now out of that delete items tests, we can say, we can add a test that talks directly to the app. So in here, we'll say test fun add item. On looking at it, we don't actually need this approver here because we aren't showing anything about the HTML, which I think means we could get rid of that as well. Check that's true. It's a bit simpler, and I bet that's true of this as well. Good. Back here. Okay. To add an item, we are going to say what data do we want to give the app in order to add an item. And at the moment, I think we can just create an item. So we should be able to say val new item equals, and we had one down here. So let's take that back here. And now we want to say app add item, the new item. And if that works, then this is true as well, where this is just new item. Ask IntelliJ to add app add item. And now we have a pattern set with delete items, which is that in transaction, we load and update the stock list, and then we take that stock list and modify it and save it. In order to do that, we need a clock. So let's take that thing, and we also need to be running in an IO context. So we can move that down there. And that's just to remind us that this is doing IO and that we have to take care when we test it. So now we can say if we manage to load our stock list, and new items is the stock list items plus our new item. And if that's changed anything, and I think given the way the stock lists work, it will have done, so we can take that out. Then we save. Does that make our test pass? Well, I'm not sure we saw it fail, which is a bit naughty, but it does pass. Does that mean that our HTTP version works? Oh, it doesn't. Why not? Well, because we haven't wired up the handler. So let's return to the roots. And this is where we need to parse the request and call the method on app. So then we've got a request, and in our test, we can see the form fields. So we can go and get those, I think. Let's just copy them for now. Go back to our roots, paste those in here. And I think we can say val ID is form from the request. Get rid of that. Oh, that's good. And our name is request form. So these are extracting the strings from the form. I think we could probably go there, 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 delete those, delete that, put in that and that, go to the beginning, multi-select here, say request.form. Oh, I messed it up badly. Never mind. GG, request form, val thing is that, and this is sell by, and this is quality. Now the types of all of these will be nullable string because they may not be in the form. So now we need to use those to build an item. The val item is, and we'll use item, and that needs an ID of item. It's going to be ID of item given the ID. Now ID needs a non-blank string or a string, but we've got a string question mark here. So I think we should bail early maybe with, if this is null, then we'll say with the Elvis return response with a status bad request. That will make this into a string. Now that string may still be blank. So this constructor here, let's have a look, is creating a non-blank string. So it will return a null if it can't build an ID. In other words, if the string is blank. So going back here, we'll pull the same stunt in here. So we'll say if that is itself null, return response bad request. Now we're not compiling yet, but we think we're getting there. So let's put that like that. And the next one is our name, which is itself a non-blank string. So we're going to do the same thing. We'll say non-blank string. Don't need the invoke. We're going to use the name. And if that turns out to be blank, we're going to return bad request. And in order to make sure it's not null, we'll put that in there. Just do the same with all of these. Let's come here and say we now need a sell by date. That's a local date. So I think we can say local date parse given our sell by. And then finally, we've got a quality. Same stunt. We can say quality needs a non-negative int or an int. So we can use an int and we can say that is quality dot, is it 2int? Yes, 2int, that'll do. And that may be null. So if it is, we get a bad request. A little bit of reformat. There's obviously a lot of duplication in there. We might be able to do better. But for now, we can say add item with a new item. And that's not compiling because it needs IO. So we can finally say these are a whole bunch of calculations to get a new item. But once we've got one, we need to say run IO, adding it. Does that pass? Well, yes, it does. Brilliant. Now, we'll tidy this all up when we add tests for illegal input. But it's worth noting that because our item uses these tiny types, which have to be validated in order to construct them, then we're forced to consider all the places that it could go wrong. Not actually true, this local date parse and this quality 2int, so we'll have to come back to that. But right now, I really want to see whether it actually works. So let's go back to our test main, restart that. Reload the browser, add in test, a test item, sell by of next weekend, quality of 1, and add. And if we scroll down, there it is. Wonderful. Okay, so addressing the form data, let's add some tests to our add item tests. We'll just duplicate this. And this is going to be validations. We will set up a variable. We'll call this good post. So we know that works. Let's inline that, delete that. And now we want a status of bad request. If we take good posts with a form of new item ID, which is blank, check that. Interesting that fails. Let's have a look why. Oh, that surprises me. Let's look in the root. Oh, I think annoyingly we're not replacing the parameter with new item ID, we're just adding another one. And this form will be getting the first one. I think actually find single is badly named, it's finding first. So let's go back. I think that we may get there by inlining this and then subtracting the one that's in there to start with. We'll have to do a better job of that at some point, but let's try that. Run. Well, that does work. Good. I'll tidy it all up later, but I think before we do that one, if we duplicate that and try one with no new item ID at all, that should be the case where we get a null. Run that. Good. And now we can kind of take these pairs. So it's no new ID and a blank new ID. So if I duplicate that, we'll do new item name. So we'll do that to new name. We'll remove it. And then we'll have the removed one. And then with a blank. Run that. Good. It's all getting a bit tedious. Let's see what we can do about that. If we were to take something like that and make a function out of it, and this would be form without. Now let's just take that out of the test so we know we're not relying on anything there. Now this will be our receiver. And now we want it to be, that is the name of the parameter. So we'll make a parameter out of that, which is parameter name. And now we don't want to be finding the pair, what I think we want is filter it first is not equal to parameter name. So that will give us another collection. And there's some issue with the types here. What is it? So I'm going to bring that out as a variable, see the type of that. And now I suspect that actually we need to take the filtered one and call toBody on them like that. No? Yes, because this just needs to change the return type. Okay, inline that, make that an expression body, delete the final one there. And then I think we can call this. So this is now good post form without the new item ID. Let's see whether that works. It does. So that means we can say this is form without new item ID. And now we can just add what we want with the form. Now we don't need to body, delete one. And I think that's because we don't want a pair in there. We want two parameters. Run that. And now we can use that to build another function, which we're going to call replacing form. Go to there, take that out of here, move that under there, reformat, make that the receiver, make this the first parameter, which is parameter name, and this is parameter value. So now we've got the primitives we need. We've got form without new item ID and replacing the form. So this is going to be good post form without new item name. And this is going to be good post form replacing form new item name to new name without the two. Join, run. We have failure, it's our validations, and it is that one. Why is that? Because we don't want to replace it with a new name, we want to replace it with a blank. Sort of proving that things worked. Good. And now I'll just fill in the others on fast forwards. And straight away we have a failure. Let's have a look. And that's a throw. And I think the reason is that in our roots, we're now trying to parse a local date, and what we're getting is an exception. So we need to deal with that. And we're going to have the same problem here with this integer. If our quality is an empty string, it's going to throw an exception. So let's just say any issues really around that parsing, going to return our bad request. And then I think I can move this up into there. Run that. Good, back to our tests. And we will do the quality. Take that into there and there. I think we've tested all those things, run that. Good. Back now to our roots. This is a bit of a mess. I think it's going to be improved by moving this here out into there and moving this out into there. Check that's true. Good. Now there's an awful lot of duplication here, and I think we have a moral question, and that is, if we get a bad request, do we care why? If we do, then we can return information about what went wrong to the client or raise a local event to be logged. If we don't, though, we can simplify this greatly by taking all these inside here and now making use of the null pointer exception by saying that we can just double bang that and that and that and that, and in fact these as well. And if I run that, we are good. And now that further lets me inline that and that and that and that. And lastly, get rid of that. I think I'm going to sleep on how bad I feel about that It's been a principle of mine never to use the bang bang damn it operator in production code, but I do like the simplicity of this. Be sure to let me know in the comments how much you hate it. For now though, I think I'm going to make that private and commit that as add item root operational. Good. Before we finish for the day, let's just review what we did. We started by reviewing the backlog and come to the conclusion that adding items to the stock list was the highest priority item. Then we prototyped the user interface in the debugger, adding in this row with inputs. And we hid that in production, this if statement here, with a feature flag of new item enabled. That let us push our work so far. And then we added a test, starting with an acceptance test via HTTP. Once we had that written but failing, we disabled it and then moved on to a low-level test, adding this app add item method. And when then that passed, we could re-enable our HTTP test and add in a handler here, which got us working. Because we can't just build things like ID and non-blank string from strings, we were forced to consider validation as we wrote that code. But in order to check we got everything right, we added some tests here for validations that showed that we actually had missed some, like catching exceptions from local date pars and toInt. So in the end, we decided to embrace exceptions and just do our validation with bang bang. It feels like this feature is close to being finished. We'll show what we've got to Alison, see whether she likes it, and if we're going in the right direction, then we'll finish it off next week. If you'd like to see that episode, then please subscribe to the channel. And if you like this content, then I think you'll enjoy the book that I wrote with that price, called Java to Kotlin, a refactoring guidebook, details of which are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching.